Hi, this is Isaac from Knock Loose. You're listening to Matt and Pete on Macho Grande.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/Macho Grande. Over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Hi guys, welcome to episode 197 of Macho Grande. I'm Pete.
And I'm Matt.
And this week we're back to normal. If you joined us for the first time on the last show, of course, we were doing our 2000 Trees coverage. So this show, we're just back to playing loads of new music and doing the news and stuff. And we kicked off with Jesus Piece. That track was called Punish. I'm really digging this album. It comes out in a couple of weeks. Next week, I think, 24th of August, via Southern Lord. And they're a band, I don't know how much you were aware of them, but I've sort of seen their videos doing the rounds. Like, they're known for pretty sort of chaotic live shows and stuff. There's quite a few decent videos around. But this is their debut album. They're from Pennsylvania, and they've been out on the road with pretty much every sort of major hardcore band you could name.
Literally had never heard of them until
cool.
last night when you messaged me to say you need to check this out. I've literally got it to listen to today, so I will be getting on it. But yeah, it's a completely new one on me.
It is brutal, and I say hardcore. I mean, they are a hardcore band. I wouldn't particularly call myself a die-hard hardcore fan. But I think if you like, obviously, this new wave of bands, like Knocked Loose and, the Code Orange style and that kind of stuff, there's a lot of blending of different genres in there, and it is such a good album. So, yeah, it's called Only Self, and it's out 24th of August via Southern Lord.
Cool.
So, yeah, how have you been?
I have been okay.
Because the last time we recorded, we were in the middle of a heat wave, and now we're in the middle of monsoon.
Oh, well, not that monsoon hasn't hit my neck of the country yet.
Have you not had it? Okay.
But it's definitely cooled off, far nicer. Just this is just right for me. I mean, it's just sort of it's eased off, and there's a bit of a breeze on a day, as opposed to the kind of sort of stifling, just the heat that wasn't going to shift. Basically, that's too much for me.
It was getting a bit much, yeah.
But yeah, it's not bad, and yeah, just been getting on with things, and yeah, cramming in new music. You've filled me with a load of new music last night, so I started through that.
Well, a bunch of that stuff I've not had a chance to check, but yeah, a load of really quite hotly tipped screamo bands that I was sort of trawling through their band camps and downloading all the, when you can name your own price. So I was just getting hold of all those albums, so there's a ton of stuff to get through. I managed to get to see Palm Reader.
Ooh, how was that?
Yeah, they played the club and they were up in the LA room, and
awesome.
They were wicked. They were so good. I mean, I don't know their stuff that well.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know the new album really well because that's really good, and they just sounded huge, absolutely huge. So that was cool. I was kind of running upstairs and downstairs between sort of playing tracks because technically I'd started work at 10. So it was a little fragmented, but I kind of caught like the first sort of 20 minutes, and then the last of it was kind of running between rooms a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, just sticking on, like trying to think of 8-minute long songs, so like Tool and Neurosis and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
brilliant.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, any new music you want to talk about?
Well, again, until you sort of like stocked up my listening pile, it didn't seem to be much out over the last sort of like week or so.
Yeah.
But the only sort of things on my listening pile happen to have been, well, there's a couple of new ones and then an old one. So like following on from the last episode where we were at 2000 Trees, one of the bands I mentioned checking out was Bad Sign. So I've managed to get hold of their first album, Live and Learn, and I've just been having that on along with like their first EP as well. So I've had that on quite a bit because I was really impressed with their sort of set list. It's kind of like therapy, sort of early, sort of like Troublegum era therapy.
Oh, cool.
Or Infernal Love era therapy with Black Peak's vocals.
That sounds great.
So I'm really enjoying that. The new album from Era came out, Neon, which I'm still sort of like, I've only sort of 2 or 3 listens through it, and it's got some really good stuff on it, but again, I'm still not like, I don't know, like I loved the first couple of Era releases, and I don't know, they just seem to have, I don't know, it's not sort of, there's no sort of like hook that's really sort of grabbed me. It's just good sort of, that sort of proggy metalcore.
Right, yeah, I've not heard anything off this new one yet.
The new Death Havana album, just sort of had that on a couple of times. There's some decent sort of summer songs on there. I'm not entirely sure this one's for me. I think they've done this interesting thing where like almost every other album seems to be not for me, and then the one that follows is aggressively for me. So, like, the last album I really liked, but the one before it I really disliked.
So, have I been sleeping under a rock, or has this had not much fanfare? Because I didn't even know they had a new album out.
Yeah, it's called Rituals, and it literally just came out last week, but they had, the big single off it was called Sinner.
Wow, that's completely passed me by. Do you know what? There's not been a single request for that at the club.
Oh,
which
really?
is weird, because like I normally will push their new singles, so I'll have to get on that.
I'm not surprised, kind of, because it's not really the sort of corporation style music on this album. There's a lot of sort of gospel vocals.
Oh, really? Okay.
Sort of, soulful choruses, and for that reason, like, it's good sort of summery music, but like I can't imagine it being played at the club.
No, okay.
And it's that thing with like typical Death Havana, really good catchy choruses, but again, it's kind of like the album before this, where it's kind of appealing to the dad rock market, if that makes sense.
Which is weird because they're pretty young still.
Yeah, although they do have the singer's sort of self-confessed sort of an old soul.
Right.
Hence the reason like the last album was called.
I don't really even know what their fan base is now either, because obviously they were pushed quite strongly on the younger lot.
Yeah,
well,
this is
they
the
clearly
thing.
moved away from that.
Well, this is the thing. This is why it's kind of like an interesting. It's an interesting kind of thing that they do. Where I mean, certainly every album they've released, they have then accompanied with an inversion of it. So, like, Fools and Worthless Liars was kind of the alt rock album, and then they did an acoustic release of the album and inverted the tracks.
Oh, that's
so
right. Yeah.
Any of the acoustic songs on that album became electric, and then all the electric songs became acoustic or like piano reworkings.
That's cool.
And they did a similar thing on all these. Yes, they reworked All These Countless Nights as well, which was the last album, which I liked, but then they did a reworked version of it. And again, the majority of it I didn't really like. They've done, I think it's only on those two albums actually. And then the following album accompanying that has then been sort of in that sort of style, if that makes any sense. So like Fools and Worthless Liars, then the acoustic version of it. Then they did the album Old Souls, which was kind of a follow-on from the acoustic. And then they started afresh with All These Countless Nights, which was kind of back to the sort of pop rock, alt-pop rock. And then they did the rework version of it, where it was kind of sort of for the, the sort of acoustic-y kind of folky side of things. And then they followed it up with a folky album, which is this one. So they kind of do that, if that makes any sense. Which means probably the next album I'll really like.
Yeah.
But this, I mean, it's not saying like this is a terrible album. It's good for what it is. And I do like a lot of what Def Havana have done and are able to do. It's just, I can't imagine it would be ever played at the club.
Okay.
But then other new albums was the new Frontierer.
Yeah.
Album, which is an absolute fucking monster.
It's it is an absolute beast in it. I'm not quite sure where I'm even at with it yet because there's so much to digest. It is just this assault on the senses,
and it's longer than the last album. The last album's longer.
All right, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's brilliant, but it's so full on.
It is so intense because, I mean, for anyone who didn't hear our review of the last Frontier album, Frontier are essentially a kind of, well, they're part Scottish, English, American, kind of played or met over the internet, and kind of that's how the band has sort of formed. But essentially, they're just like a full-on sensory assault noise machine.
It's so heavy. I think it's free, isn't it, at the moment? So if anyone out there hasn't got it, I'm pretty sure it's a name your own price on Bandcamp.
Yeah, this new album is called Unloved, and it's so hard to even pick out grooves or moments from it because it's just such an assault. It's kind of like Ion Dissonance. It's the heaviest, most spazzy sides of Dillinger with just, I suppose, the aggression of like Converge. And even live, they're insane, but like, it's trying to describe it. I'm really not doing it justice.
No, we should play a track on the next show.
So intense.
I meant to on this one, and I completely forgot. So
but it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, like, just go check out the free, certainly the free single. If the album's not free anymore, the single Glitcher was free, and it is just insane. Prepare yourself because your brain will probably explode. That's all I've got. What about yourself?
Frontierer, Deaf Heaven, still listening to that a lot. Mostly still Vain as well. I can't stop listening to that album. The new Thou album, and there's not much else, I don't think. Spanish Love Songs and Real Friends, give both those a listen. I listened to that Alien Weaponry that you recommended.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I like the idea, although the kind of grumpy old man in me was a little bit like, well, I kind of heard this before with bands like Puya and obviously Sepultura, but obviously they're not Maori.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm not sure that the songs back it up.
No, I mean, again, I think as I sort of said on the show, it's just like it's got some interesting sort of new metal-ish vibes on it, and it's just got. I thought it was just fun, and again, because they're all young, they're like 16. But yeah, I just thought it was a cool sort of mix of, again, it's kind of that sort of, like you say, Sepultura, Soulfly, and
yeah, I mean definitely Puya. Like
Yeah.
definitely getting elements of Puya in there. It's good. I mean, it is interesting. It's a bit different. It's interesting to see people digging it as well. Like I've seen quite a few younger people sort of banging on about it.
Yeah,
which is
that's
good.
the other thing of like it's just good that like especially from the other side of the world, bands getting that kind of recognition. It's just kind of it just shows promise. Like, but yeah.
And then, I think that's it, because like I said, I've got this massive pile of sort of screamo bands from the States to get through next. So, I think that's it for me.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that as well, because, like I've said, the last couple of weeks has been kind of low on releases, although it does seem like things are going to start gearing up again.
It's about to go ape shit, isn't it? Let's face it.
September through to November. Looks like there's some crazy releases coming out. In fact, some we'll talk about in the news. So, yeah, we'll crack on.
All right, so let's sneak in another track. I'd never heard of this band before. They're called God Complex. Do you know these guys?
I do not.
No. So they're from Merseyside, which is from the UK. They've got a load of UK dates throughout autumn. And this is the first single of their upcoming EP. The EP is called Created Sick. And this comes out on the 5th of October via Ven Records, and I think you're really going to dig this. So this track's called Breeding Filth. Alright, so there you go, that was God Complex. Yeah, I'm really digging that.
Yeah, that sounded pretty nasty.
So, yeah, that's something to look forward to in October.
Cool.
Let's do the news. I've only kind of put down the most recent stuff because obviously we've not covered the news in a little while. So, obviously, if there's anything else you want to jump in on. We'll just start off with the sad news, first of all, and that is Jay Sin, which is Jason Luttrell. He was the Primer 55 vocalist, sadly passed away a couple of days ago. He'd spent the last few years in quite poor health, apparently. and had issues with sort of getting life insurance and stuff to pay for medication. So Primer 55, I mean, if anyone out there doesn't know that band, they were a really good new metal, specifically quite rap metal band, with that wave of, all those American new metal bands that I certainly dug the hell out of. So yeah, that was really sad to hear. There is like a GoFundMe set up as well to help cover his funeral costs.
Okay, the thing is, I did see, I didn't recognise the name, and I sort of read up on him, and I didn't recognise the band either, so it was...
Yeah, I mean, Primer 55 were one of the smaller, certainly over here, they didn't really get the attention that bands like, you get a few bands like, say, Kilgore that kind of exploded with, a load of press and then kind of died away, whereas Primer 55 never quite had that, and, they weren't part of, like, Roadrunner Records or anything, so... over in the States, they were... I guess they'd be the equivalent of our... when, like, 1 Minute Silence got to tour with every decent American band...
Yeah.
Primer 55 was sort of always that kind of middle, good support to the big bands. So over in the States, they did some big shows. But, yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I just remember bands like Darwin's Waiting Room and Reveille and those kind of bands that kind of size, So,
right, okay.
But yeah, I mean, if anyone out there wants to go hear a slice of nostalgic new metal, yeah, definitely go check out Primer 55. You've got people that have talked about it online as well, like... do you know the Talk To Me podcast? Because he was in Primer 55 as well. So, obviously, he's given it quite a bit of coverage.
Right, okay. No, okay.
Oh, that's a really good podcast, yeah.
Cool.
Howard Jones joined Killswitch Engage again for End of Heartache.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Was it two shows he did that recently, I think?
Yeah, one in London and... I can't remember what the other one was Manchester.
Because they have said that he's going to appear on the new album, haven't they?
Yes, he is duetting on a track, and again, just sort of like it's in similar to how Jesse, after when he left the first time, he sort of came back on the End of Heartache album and guested on, I can't remember what track it was. Someone shouting at me right now.
I really hope the new album's going to absolutely slay. I'm really, really in the mood for like a really good comeback.
They do need it, especially after kind of like... I mean, it was kind of a big fanfare to have Jesse return, and then it was kind of like a lackluster album, and then followed up with a sort of lackluster follow-up. So I mean, like at this sort of stage... Especially for Killswitch Engage, which is, it's a big brand name. They do need to pull something out of the bag that's better than, like for a band that have had such big singles and also such big albums, they have gone off the boil.
Yeah, I mean, if you think that last album only really had one passable single, and even then it didn't really make big waves. It's not been good enough to, like, at the level they're at, they should be sort of like now doing more headline shows than support slots, and especially when they're, I mean, like, they do play a lot of the new songs, but they do also rely on a big back catalogue. Yeah, I mean, they've got so many bangers in their back catalogue.
But it would be nice to see a tour that's kind of like reliant on like the brand new, like to have a brand new album that comes back that's so strong where you're kind of, it's hard not to play every song off the new album.
Yeah.
It would be great to come back at that. And the thing is, like, the caliber of the musicians and the songwriters in the band.
Well, that's why the last two albums have been so surprising.
Yeah, it just feels like, hang on a minute, like, especially whenever, like, there's also the gossip of, I've forgotten the side project.
What, like, oh no, that's the thingy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the name of a Neurosis album.
Oh.
Times of Grace.
There you go, well done.
Yeah. So, but it just went out of my head.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with news that Times of Grace are sort of almost finished writing their sort of follow-up on how it's kind of like, it's intentionally diverse from what Killswitch are doing, given that it's essentially the same band. Kind of.
Yeah.
It did make me think that certainly the last Killswitch album would have been better than it was, and it's not to say that there weren't decent songs on it, but it just wasn't the the sort of essential and kind of immediate style of songs that they need. They need to come back with something that's vital. Again, not that's just acceptable. Killswitch can do better than acceptable, but I feel they've just been sort of towing the line for like the last couple of albums, and
they ventured a little bit too trad metal for me as well.
Yeah, and like, as much as I like the band, the sort of like the stage show has become a bit of a gimmick now, and that's why it needs to come back with, like, I can accept the gimmick if you come back with something that's vital musically. Come back with a couple of, like, come back with My Curse. Like an album full of, like, just those sorts of singles.
Yeah, or three at least.
3 singles, but with an album. I'd like sort of like a set list made up of 8 new songs that are just really good.
Yeah, okay. Know? I think you might be overreaching slightly. I'll be happy with 3.
But I mean, like things like, for example, like Architects. Like, they come back with All Our Gods, and like that's gone down so well that it's hard to sort of fit in songs from even the last album. That's the kind of thing I think that this far into their career they should come out with. Just one that is like, here we are, 8 albums into our career, and we can still sort of do something that's just jaw-dropping. Not that's just, here we are, here's another album. I don't think that does them any favours, and that just keeps them at the level they're at. And I think that there's at least another couple of levels that Killswitch could jump than just sort of where they're at.
Especially with seeing Parkway's, recent success.
Exactly.
I mean, not that I want them to do that style, but,
no.
If Parkway can do it, then fucking Killswitch definitely can.
Oh, exactly. And, instead of sort of like being like the last couple of support, like the last couple of tours they've done, they have done some weird support slots where, like, supporting Bullet for My Valentine, and like, it's, like, okay, Bullet are still big, but you should be at the Bullet level.
Yeah, totally.
Or higher. I mean, like, so it's just that sort of, and again, it's predominantly down to, like, you haven't had the big hits in a couple of albums. You need to, and we know you can do it because you do have some quality singles here and there. But anyway, that's my rant over. I just think that they do need to pull something special out.
Yeah, I totally agree. Have you read ex-Misery Signals frontman Carl, I'm probably going to pronounce his second name wrong, Schubach? Is that how you say his second name?
I can't pronounce it, but yes, yeah, from Saskatchewan, Canada.
So he has put online a very sort of emotional account of his time with, like, joining through and how he left Misery Signals. It's kind of like the first time he's spoken, about how it happened. It's a very emotional read. If you're into that band at all, go and check it out. I think he's a fantastic singer.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because we talked about this whenever we talked about the Misery Singles movie.
Yes, which is an incredible documentary, if anyone out there's not seen that. Yeah,
which was on the Malice 10 tour, which, again, kind of is part and parcel as to why the whole thing sort of, like, has come up. But it's interesting that he's now sort of speaking about it now, because I didn't realise that they did the tour intentionally without him and then sort of kicked him out.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story start to finish, because I actually didn't realise that he joined the band after literally, like, just adding his vocals to singing along to the debut album.
And MySpace audition.
Yeah, and he, like, didn't have any previous experience, and they picked him, and he was like, this is suddenly out of nowhere, I'm out on the road touring with my heroes. And he sort of goes through saying, he didn't expect to have, like, this equal footing in the band or have a say in where the music went. And then when they changed, was it one of the guitarists? And he was like, this
well, yeah, it was the guitarist and bassist.
But it was saying it felt, all kinds of issues when, like, a newer guy than him came in and just started calling all the shots. And
it was an established guy. That was the other thing. It was the guitarist from Shai Hulud.
But by that point, he'd been the frontman of Misery Signals for several years. That's the thing.
It sort of cut back to just being like.
Well, he fully stepped up to that role, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I prefer him to Jesse.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because it's kind of the Jason Newsted syndrome
Yeah, absolutely.
of
Yeah,
just like never getting given a break, even though And the thing is like I feel sorry for the guy because just
yeah.
some of the stuff he's saying, it's like I can understand. I've been in those sorts of positions where it really makes you start doubting yourself and affecting your mental health.
It sounds like he's gone for a really tough time. I mean, to be honest, hands down, I just wish the dude had just found a new bunch of guys and
Yeah,
he was just in a different band.
yeah.
Don't dwell on it now.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm still sort of like gutted because like the last album was brilliant. Like, yeah.
Well, and the one before is incredible.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, exactly. I mean, like, as much as like Malice is a good album, I mean, like, especially going back and listening to it since watching that DVD movie, and I kind of appreciate it even more. It's still his vocals that I prefer on the newer albums.
Oh, I completely
It's
do.
just-
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's just a bit of a shame, but he is doing. He has got like a SoundCloud, and he is doing stuff, but it doesn't seem like he's got a new band as such yet.
Right. Okay. So yeah, go and have a read of that. I didn't put much else down. Obviously, the super mega exciting news is that Norma Jean have announced that they're beginning writing. Later this month, I believe they said.
Yes.
So the new album in the works. And did you see Corey did put a post? I can't remember what the actual tweet was now, but it was something like, "Are you ready for a kind of to the point album?" or something to those effect.
I didn't read an announcement. I just saw that there was an announcement. So
I think it was something like, "Do you want a raw album?" or it was something like that. It's like rather than this, because obviously they spent a long time prepping Polar Similar, and those songs very intricate, very layered. Friends, stop tapping. Jesus Christ. So whether this album is going to have that kind of slightly more hardcore-y bit of a punk edge, everything's going to be done a bit quicker. It'd be interesting.
Right.
So yeah, very excited.
No, I didn't see that. I'm stoked anyway because Polar Similar was such a good album, and it's very rare for me to dislike an album from one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, touch wood, it has happened in the past where one of my favorite bands has then turned around and released absolute trash and has put me off them for the rest of my life. It's not entirely impossible.
They won't do that to us.
Yeah, no. Although that kind of leads nicely. Segues nicely into the teasing of new Bring Me the Horizon stuff. Speaking of bands who've released stuff that then disappointed me,
right?
But they've started doing. Have you following like their sort of little teasing announcement, putting sort of posters up around the country, or I think they've been seen around the world. From what I gather, I mean, I don't know about that, but certainly the rumor mill is now sort of like these posters with a phone number saying, do you want to join? Do you want to be in this cult or something?
Do we know what happens when you call the number?
Yes, there is a sort of like.
I love this kind of shit, by the way. Like when bands go this extra mile.
It's nothing new, but it's just exciting that whenever people do this. But yeah, there's like there's an answering machine, and I mean, there's also the website. But anyway, it basically just kind of is a lot. There's a lot of white noise, but you can also hear this voice reciting some of the stuff that's on this website about like, finding balance and things like that, and all this stuff. And then it's like, but at first we must piss you off. And then it does play sort of like snippets of music,
okay,
which again, because it's kind of done through a phone / done through an answering machine, it does have that kind of like speakerphone quality of I can't really tell what it is and what it isn't. I mean, but August 21st or 22nd, or 20, I can't remember, actually August 24th maybe, is when we're going to start getting either an official announcement or the release of a single or the announcement of the album, but also does coincide with the secret announcement of, or the announcement, sorry, of the secret Reading band, which people are already sort of like speculating.
I went to his new restaurant in Sheffield the other week.
Oh yeah,
this is really cool. Like they've done a really, really cool job with the place, and it's on the side of the Drop Dead building. And
cool.
yeah, we all went there for lunch the other day. The whole place is like, even all the food, all the drink, everything's vegan, and it's proper, just really done well, like dirty junk food stuff. So like really good loaded burgers and fries and stuff. But the whole place is kitted out with arcades and arcade booths. So like these little hexagonal pods that you can kind of lie in and just play PlayStation and stuff. And then there's like retro, like all the kind of arcade cabinets you'd want from being a kid, like the Simpsons arcade cabinet and the Turtles one, and yeah, it's cool.
The website is like, do you want to start a cult? Or and the website is joinmantra.org.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll take a look.
And then it's sort of like, it's an invitation to salvation, so you're already sort of thinking, oh, well, maybe the single's called Salvation, maybe the album's called Salvation. But anyway, it's sort of like, without going through everything, it's the answer machine does kind of roughly say things like, man can save his soul, like the bright, cool dawn after a night of prison and of thunder, man can taste that freedom sought so long. I mean, there's kind of things in here which might be lyrics, that might not be. Man has spoken of the second coming of Christ and the judgment day. We have kept wide the doorway for salvation by retaining religious freedom. Don't know about that. So it's all these things have to have answers, and all we will tell you now is that you can be free, but first we must piss you off. Salvation will return August 21st.
Cool, interesting.
So, again, I do think they're going to be announcing the Reading secret band, and probably a single plus a new album, probably for January, February. But I mean, because this is a similar kind of like ramp up to how Sempiternal started.
Yeah, and they had that nice campaign with all the umbrellas and stuff, and yeah, they're good at that stuff. Yeah, it's good.
I mean, they're certainly the right band with the right kind of street audience to enjoy this sort of thing. Who knows what this album will sound like?
Well, it'll be interesting because obviously the last thing they've said is that they're going to be heavily inspired by 21 Pilots.
I know.
So we'll see, won't we?
I mean, like, I mean, obviously Jordan, I can see, becoming even more of a sort of like focal point with bringing in electronics and keyboards. I mean, this is the problem I've had with the last couple of albums, is just the sort of like the relegation of guitar and kind of the relegation of a good breakdown. So we'll say, again, I can imagine it's going to be amazing, just aggressively not for me.
Yeah.
But we will see.
Yeah.
Look forward to it.
Yes, we will. Anything else? Because I've not put anything else down.
As I Lay Dying announced a load of European dates, and as of yesterday, they have announced that they're going to have to upgrade all the venues because the demand has been so high. Which is, again, it's one of these weird debates. It's still going on of like, where's the line? Where's the grey area? When someone does something, can they have a career afterwards? I mean, it seems to, it's a conversation that seems to be happening in all sorts of industries at the moment, of like, someone does something 10 years ago and they're paying for it now.
Well, didn't that just happen with I Killed the Prom Queen as well? Didn't they just get pulled from, they announced like the reunion show or classic lineup show?
Yeah, it was a classic lineup show for just a couple of dates for a Sydney festival, or a couple of dates in Australia.
And it was comments from like several years ago, wasn't it?
It was from like sort of 6 or 8 years ago. I mean, it was definitely a while ago. But again, it's this sort of thing of like, Crafter has always been a bit of a sort of outspoken dick when it comes to things like this, because he's always said stupid things. And again, it's just that sort of like, it's the sort of comment that was edgy 6 years ago when he wrote it. He's like, oh yeah, women, getting women to gigs so you can do this and blah blah blah. Whereas not, and then obviously the climate's changed, so that kind of like edgy sarcasm.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what happens with Brand New next as well. How they're going to come back from it.
Yeah, so. But this is the thing. I mean, it's like, it's all sorts of. I mean, at what point is someone sort of like can someone grow? Can someone improve? I mean, it's that sort of weird, like, I don't know. It's that, again, I mean, certainly in As I Lay Dying's case, I kind of see it as like, look, he got caught, he did something really stupid, really bad, but he's paid his price. I mean, like, more than anything, the rest of the band have come back. You could be cynical and say, yeah, they've done it for the money, but it's like they still have to go on stage and travel the world with this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they can come back to it, then I can come back to it. And, I really like the new single, so I'm excited. It's just a shame they're not playing the UK, because...
Oh, I'm sure it'll happen.
Well, yeah, but again, I don't know if there's any immigration sort of like laws with people with criminal records.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think.
Which is why they're only sort of doing Europe at the moment. Or, well, they're not hitting certain countries even for a European tour.
Right.
So we'll see.
Anything else?
I think that we've covered everything otherwise. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's play another track. We're going to play a band called If Not For Me, and then we're going to talk about Bury Tomorrow because we're going to review their new album. So this, If Not For Me, this is their debut album. It's called Capture the Current. This is coming out via Standby Records. This just came out via Standby Records a couple of weeks ago. And it says they're a 4-piece metalcore outfit hailing from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, another Pennsylvania band this week. Comprised of veterans ranging from all over the central PA music scene. They deliver their own brand of catchy choruses, driving riffs, and hard-hitting breakdowns with an explosive live performance to match. And again, I mean, they've been out on the road with loads of cool bands like Wage War and August Burns Red, that kind of stuff. Yep. Again, if you've not heard this, I think you'll really dig it. We're going to go for First One's Free, which is the first track. So that was If Not For Me. Right, we're going to do an album in review, and we are going to have a chat about the brand new Bury Tomorrow album, which is called Black Flame.
Yeah, this is their 5th studio album. Where to begin?
Well, we absolutely loved the last album, and you're a long-standing fan of the band.
Yeah.
I have kind of dipped in and out and always kind of thought, yeah, they're solid, they're tight. But it was only really until the last album that I really paid attention, so much so that I included it in my top 10 of the year.
That's right, yeah. Which was, again, I think... Yeah, in fact, I think that's the first sort of Bury Tomorrow album that you really sort of...
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've played them at the club, but I think I've always unfairly just... I mean, partly because it's not entirely the sort of thing I'd put on at home anyway. It just isn't. Yeah. And I think I unfairly just thought it's a bit generic metalcore that I've heard before, which in some regards it is, but then they've got so many huge tracks that you kind of can't turn a blind eye. And then when that last album came out, I was just like, do you know what, this is so good start to finish, and their live show is really impressive.
Yeah.
That I just had to weigh it all up and think, yeah, this is just too good to ignore.
Yeah, I mean, they do, like, Dan has a lot of personality as a frontman.
Yeah, he's great. And it's so they've actually had a really solid lineup, haven't they, for quite a while? And they've only had, like, one member change or something.
Yeah, it was...
which is rare these days.
Since the second album, and Mehdi was the additional guitarist, the lead guitarist that left. And, yeah, no, they've had a solid lineup since. But what they haven't had is a solid sort of label support.
Yeah, so they're now with the newly reformed Music for Nations.
Yes, and the last 2 albums were on Nuclear Blast.
Yeah.
So they have sort of like had this sort of like, what I'm trying to say, like they haven't had a solid backing from a stable label.
No, although
on every album.
They are big labels to be on, though. But I see what you mean, yeah.
Sort of album 5 is kind of crazy because I remember sort of like, there were gigs I've been to where they sort of like were struggling writing the second album.
Yeah, because didn't they nearly split up at one point?
Yeah, Union of Crowns was certainly like, I remember talking about like they treated it as like it was going to be their last album,
right.
Which is like kind of just crammed everything on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've still been going. Now, again, like you said, the last album was a high watermark because I honestly thought that it was the best thing that they had done to date.
Yeah.
Because kind of prior to that, like, I loved the first album, Portraits. The second album, Union of Crowns, had a lot on it.
Which one's got Lionheart on it?
Union of Crowns.
Okay. Yeah, that's got some right bangers.
Which is like, it's a really good album, but there's a couple of sort of like meh tracks on. Runes was the third album from 2014, which I wasn't a massive fan of. I thought it was just a bit by numbers, which is why I was absolutely floored when Earthbound came out in 2016, because it is a beast of an album.
Yeah.
And every track on it as well, it was all slimlined down to 10 tracks compared to sort of like their, like I say, Runes and Union Crowns, were 15 tracks, 16 tracks respectively.
I think they've wisely done that again on this album, just kept it to a nice tight 10.
Exactly, and I don't think that this album, getting into the review, I don't think that this album hits the highs of Earthbound. I don't think it's got the standout singles from Earthbound, but it's solid. It is like just carrying on what they've done on the last album with just some more sort of solid metal. It would have been, I feel like it would have been great to have had just a bit of another kind of step up for them, because like they transcended several levels on the last album, because I didn't think that they would have ever broken through the sort of ceiling that they had hit. But they did, because that was an incredible album. It really opened up a lot of doors and brought in a massive amount of people to the fan base. But Black Flame, I think I'm not going to say it's more of the same, because I think that he's definitely doing it a disservice. This is definitely sort of continuing the high quality of songwriting that they've done. It just doesn't have the standout tracks.
They're not as big, are they? I mean, I think they come close. I mean, Black Flame could belong. The title track could belong on the last album in terms of size.
and I do think that getting into the sort of nittier gritty, picky sides of things, I do think there's issues with some of the production.
So this is weird. On some of the tracks, I think the production is absolutely incredible. It's so punchy, and it just sounds great to listen to. And then at other times, it's a bit weird. And then I read online that apparently, I didn't realise this, but they pulled one of their singles because there was a problem. Yeah. That's quite odd. And it was produced by Dan Weller, who obviously knows what he's doing.
Yeah, like I think it was Black Flame when it came out. Like they hit several 100,000 reviews, but we're getting lots of comments about how the cymbal sounded digital. It had that sort of.
And the clean vocals seem to come under a lot of fire as well.
Yeah,
I think there's some over processing.
Yeah, processing sort of feel. It's hard to sort of describe a sort of an audio sensation, but it was like that sort of audio pixelation.
Can't you sing it?
Symbols. Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of
replicate the noise.
No, it's because it's a very sort of like digital and cold kind of effect. But yeah, I mean, the video had hit several 100,000 views already.
Right.
And they pulled it to re-upload it, which obviously was
That's crazy.
Like you say, it's a big deal to sort of strike down a video to start again. But that version does sound better. But I do think like the second single, Knife of Gold, suffers from this kind of like muddy-ish.
Yeah, it's a slightly strange choice for the second single as well, I think. I mean, it is one of the sort of aggressive tracks. It's good and fast, and it's got a great breakdown in it as well.
Yeah, I think that is the heaviest song on the album.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like Stormbringer. I think
that's a great track.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I prefer. Again, I don't think Knife of Gold was a great choice as a single, but I do like the video. The video for it's brilliant.
Oh, I've not seen that.
It's kind of like people in body paint, but the way it's sort of shot is really interesting. It's just this cool sort of like visual effect going on, and like the way like the edits. So like if the band are all in black, it'll be like a white background and the band are all painted black. And then it'll flash inverted, so then it's like the background is black and the band are all gold.
Right, gotcha.
And it's some really cool sort of like visual effects going on. But yeah, again, it's just sort of like it's sort of nitpicking that there's bits where the drums sound lost in places, and like.
There's one of the tracks where, loads of bands do that thing where it's sort of slightly filtered at the beginning of the track and then it kicks in. And I can't remember which song it is, but it feels like they're almost doing that, but it's not, and it just sounds a bit wrong. It's weird. It's like there's sort of no bass in the mix for a while. It's quite weird. Other than that, I do like the rest of the production. I think it sounds really meaty.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's just these odd moments.
The majority of it has these really good effects, and I do like the fact that there's these little sort of like
the little outros,
audio outro, or sort of electronic outros.
They're really cool because they're not too overstayed either.
Yeah, and they weren't on the single releases.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that they've not done them as individual tracks. So, yeah, it's quite cool.
And it was kind of a nice surprise when they sort of appeared, because it was like, ooh, because it's not like it's an interlude. It's kind of a continuation of elements of the song.
And they tie in nice because towards the end, you do get, and I think this is amazing, that you get that, like there's the last track with the soft section.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah, Peacekeeper's a great sort of closer.
I mean, that was kind of my thing, is that I put it on, I was like, you know what, it's so easy for me to just kind of think, yeah, I'm kind of back to how I used to feel. This is a bit generic. I've heard it all before. But then, just as you think that this track is maybe a bit filler, there'll be either a riff or a chorus that's so huge you just can't ignore it. And then before you know it, it's completely redeemed the track. And then this is the clincher, is that they've managed to end the album so strongly. And that makes such a big difference these days.
Totally, because I do think, like, for me anyway, Knife of Gold track 6 is kind of the weakest moment on it, because it just doesn't sound right. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to sort of describe it, but it just doesn't sound as... It's all the individual elements within it don't sound clear, so it just sounds like a mush. And then it's kind of like the 3 songs after that are really strong, but they take a lot to redeem the sort of steam I feel I've lost from track 6.
You see, I feel like The Age is a bit fillery. That's the only one that I'm maybe still getting used to it a little bit. I mean, I won't forget, obviously, that last album. It took a long time before I suddenly put it in my top 10. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this could still grow on me, yeah. But at the moment, it's 6 and 7, which is Knife of Gold, and The Age. But then, as I say, those last 3 tracks are just the end of. Well, I mean, Overcast is probably my favourite.
Okay.
And the sort of almost Gojira style breakdown. It's so good at the end of that track, and then obviously the last track's amazing. So that for me, it just really, really picks it up.
My favourite track is the opening track, No Less Violent. I just think that, I mean, like, as soon as I first put that on, I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, I mean,
they've done it again.
Sorry, I said Black Flame earlier. I'd say that. Sorry, it's No Less Violent is probably the biggest single to me. In terms of the previous album, and then probably Black Flame.
Because that one just sort of feels that feels like the big single.
Yeah, it's huge.
Which I don't think they've released, or have they?
I don't know.
Let me just double check that.
I could live without some of the solos, but that's me.
I know.
Sometimes they do it really well, like on the last album, in Cemetery in particular, the solo on that is so good and weaves into the song so well. Whereas again, some of these feel a little bit back to kind of, well, we need to insert a stock metal solo.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You'd be surprised what the new single is then.
Okay.
The newest single is The Age.
Oh, really? Oh, that's weird as fuck.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I would have expected, like, either second single or third single, especially.
Because Adrenaline's huge as well.
Less Violent. Yeah, Adrenaline's as well. Like, the opening of this album was really strong, which is why I was kind of like I said, No Less Violent did then kind of make me think, like, okay, we were on to another. It's just a dip down from Earthbound, basically. It's sort of, like, continuing the sort of, like, not the plateau, but it's just sort of leveled out the ascent a little bit.
And not by much, I'd say.
Oh, no, not by much. It's just like I'm literally nitpicking this because I think that Bury Tomorrow have really found a groove now. Since I still think, like, I mean, a lot of fans still like it, but I think Ruins for me was a kind of by numbers, a metalcore by numbers kind of album. And, I think that was when I was like, maybe they're not destined to follow in, say, Architect's footsteps. But, Earthbound came out and it was like, you know what? They could be the next Architects. They could hit that kind of level. Like, if they continued knock it out, sort of like Earthbound level of music, I could see them doing an Alexandra Palace headline.
Yeah.
It's not without possibility.
This has had a decent push. I mean, Music for Nations, they were a big label, they're now quite a big subsidiary label, and it's had a decent push in terms of advertising and stuff. Have you seen much of this across your social media? Because I've not seen people talking about it.
I've not seen...
and I don't know if that's just because most social media is now broken, because it's getting requested at the club, like Black Flame and No Less Violent have both been requested at the club.
Yeah,
nice.
I've not seen it across social media, but I have seen posters at venues and in town and, at gigs.
Yeah, it's had a decent push.
At festivals as well. I mean, like, it's got that kind of, like, iconic... I mean, it's almost like a Storm Thorgerson kind of front cover with that kind of symbol and just sort of, like, the way... I mean, it's got that kind of, like, iconic sort of, like, you can see it on posters across the place.
Yeah.
But again, I've not seen it getting a big push outside of that, but I do see, like, their Twitter and Instagram getting lots of love. So, like,
cool. Okay.
I
can't imagine fans won't be behind this, because it is
like,
just solid.
If you look at the video numbers, they're doing well. I mean, like, The Age isn't doing as well as Black Flame's doing. Even especially with, like, having the fact it was sort of re-uploaded, but Black Flame's been out 3 months and it's done 3 times as many views as The Age has in 1 month.
Right. For
example, a Knife of Gold, The Age has done twice as much as Knife of Gold's official video has. So that's not really a great sort of thing to measure by, but when you look back at some of their previous videos and, like, they are hitting sort of like a couple of million views on certain videos. So, like, they can get out there with a big single. You know, you look at like Lionheart, 1.2 million views, Honourable Rain, 2.2 million views. So like, with the right sort of songs, they can get a massive sort of following. But like Earthbound levels, 618,000 views, which is kind of more similar to Black Flame, which is why I think No Less Violent should be the next single if they're going to do a fourth single.
Yeah, I'm really surprised. Knife of Gold and The Age, but that's crazy. Yeah,
I think it's solid.
Cool. Okay.
And certainly when you look at like Amazon reviews as well, like it's got a lot of love from people.
Well, the press have loved it as well. I mean, I don't think I've seen below an 8 yet online or in the press.
Yeah.
So they seem to be behind it as well, which is cool.
My only critique is that it's just not flooring me in the way that Earthbound absolutely stunned the fuck out of me.
Yeah. Okay.
I just was not expecting them to pull something out of the bag like that, and that album was kind of like the the name of the album's gone out of my head. After Ruin, it was kind of like when Architects came back with
the one with Devil's Island on it, and
I'm annoying myself now that I can't remember the name of it.
That's ridiculous, mate.
Oh, Daybreaker.
I
was thinking Heartbreak. No,
rubbish.
Daybreaker. kind of like, you know, they came back with something that was like such a surprise, which is why I'm kind of disappointed that, you know, following on from the comparison, you know, I think it's kind of a fair comparison because Architects have broken through that roof. They followed that up with Lost Forever, Lost Together, which was what I was kind of hoping for with this new Bury Tomorrow album, was like follow up Earthbound with something that's even better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think they could afford to go a bit edgier. I do like that they've started to experiment. I mean, I don't know if it is in the previous albums, but that moment in the last track where it does go chilled, I think that has bags of potential.
Yeah. So anyway, numerical score, where do you sit?
I'm going to give it a very solid 8 out of 10.
That's exactly where I sit. And following on from all those other reviews where it's getting solid 8s, that's kind of where we fall. I think that's fair.
Cool. Okay.
And what song?
Well, I think we should probably play No Less Violent.
You think?
Yeah, seeing as though it's not a single. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Don't you agree?
I think so, because like, you know, if you are not familiar with Bury Tomorrow, this track is just sort of like reeks of quality. This is a brilliant song.
Life
All right, so that was our review of Bury Tomorrow. Let us know your thoughts. info@machograndepodcast.co.uk.
Yep, or you can tweet us at Macho Grande Pod. We'll finish out with a bit of film chat.
Yes, I've started to try and catch up on things now because I'd got quite far behind. Starting with the crappiest, I watched the Beguiled, which is got decent people in it. It's got like Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman and Kirsten Dunst, and it's directed by Sofia Coppola.
Never heard of it.
Oh, right, okay. It got really good reviews. I didn't like it at all. I found it incredibly dull. I was giving up the will to live by the end of it, to be honest. Basically, it's sort of like there's this girl's kind of finishing school set during the Civil War, and there's only like a handful sort of skeleton crew of, I think there's one member of staff and about 4 girls. And one of the girls comes across a wounded soldier, which is Colin Farrell, and they take him in and kind of one by one become infatuated by him, and it's really rubbish.
Oh, fantastic.
Black Dynamite, this is just this incredible blaxploitation comedy that I thought was brand new. I heard people talking about it on a film podcast, and I assumed it came out this year, and it came out ages ago, but it's well worth a watch. Really, really funny. What else did I watch? Cargo, which is on Netflix, and this is Martin Freeman, and it's basically just him and his wife and daughter, and they're sort of sailing down this river, I think in Australia, and he's basically just trying to protect his family because this kind of deadly epidemic has taken over, and they daren't set foot on land, but they don't know anything about boats, and they don't know how long this boat's going to last for. It's worth a watch. It's on Netflix now. It's well worth a watch. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Then The Night Eats the World. Now, this is really cool. I'm slightly confused because it's described as, it's like a French director and it's described as a French film, except certainly the version I watched was completely in English. It wasn't dubbed, like they were speaking English. Even the posters and signs on the walls and stuff, all English. So it's not particularly French for a French film, but it is set in Paris. And basically this guy falls asleep after a party and wakes up to find that the whole world has been infected by a zombie outbreak. And it's mostly single location and very reminiscent of Wreck, because it's like all set in this large apartment building. So he's sort of smashing through to the other apartments and sort of working his way through this building kind of thing. It's really good. Very kind of solitary zombie film, and it was cool.
Right.
So yeah, The Night Eats the World. That's well worth a watch. And then last two, A Quiet Place, which obviously has been talked about loads this year. As this sort of family trying to survive from creatures that hunt by sound. I loved it. I mean, it has a few kind of plot holes that you kind of have to just ignore. Some of the dialogue's a little bit meh, but it's a great film. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cliched, or it's kind of, you know, it's kind of got these sort of like things that in a less, in a lesser quality film would be really irritating, but it's done well, and it's sort of like, there's things that happen in it where it's kind of like, yeah, but that kind of has to happen now just for the sake of the narrative of the film.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, it works enough.
But it's done so well, and there's so many little sort of nods throughout it that clearly show just how well they planned the whole thing out.
Yeah.
That kind of makes up for it. It's really, really good. And I don't know, it kept me on my toes, and I like how kind of brutal it goes as well.
Yeah.
So, no, it was good. And then last night we watched Deadpool 2, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I don't think it's as good as the first one, and I think it does need a bit of trimming down. I found it starts off so well, and you basically just don't stop laughing for maybe 40 minutes. And the title sequence alone is worth the price of the Blu-ray.
Totally. Is this the super duper cut version that's come out now?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I've no idea. I just noticed there was a big section in the middle where, like, shortly after Cable comes in and they sort of get out of the prison and stuff. Spoilers. I've just found that I didn't laugh for quite a while, and I just felt a bit like without the comedy, I'm not really that into the film. And then obviously a lot of it is still. There's still a lot of just, it's Colossus, and kind of that's the same joke, and there's lots of freeways. Can you really not actually have a location yet? It's weird, those films, like for the budget that it must have. Occasionally it's a little behind, but the jokes are really good, and it's so much fun that you just can't really knock it. But yeah, I would have happily trimmed maybe 20 minutes out to cut it back a bit.
Yeah, well, again, like without sort of knowing which version you saw, because
I don't know.
the home release has come out with like the sort of, the super duper extras with bits that are slightly more violent and, alternative takes or whatever in places. So I don't know if it's the same as the version I've seen in the cinema. But yeah, there's certainly the version I saw anyway, the cinematic cut was more focused on the action side of things.
Right, okay.
Especially when you've got like one of the directors from John Wick is your director, that's where your focus is sort of going, which is kind of a shame because the jokes were kind of more of the same and it kind of made it less special.
Yeah. I mean, it's just not quite as good as the first one. Let's
yeah,
face
I mean,
it,
the thing is, like, I think that's what's so fun about the first one is it's kind of like it's cheeky because it knows it shouldn't have been made. It knows that it got made because it was leaked footage that the crowd demanded. So, like the studio was forced to make this film, and they reluctantly give it, a sort of $60 million budget, and it makes like 800 or 900 million profit, something
Crazy.
Insane, which is, it's like, then you come to the sequel, it's kind of like, oh no, now we're behind it. And I think that's where it sort of loses its shine a little bit, because it's like, well, you've done the thing, you shouldn't exist, you've done the whole sort of like, you shouldn't have existed gag.
Yeah.
Now you have to kind of establish that, and it's fine.
Much as I like the child actor, who it's the same lad in The Hunt for the Wilder People.
And they even use references from people.
That is amazing. I mean, some of the little quips are brilliant, but I didn't particularly like his character that much. And as I say, just reusing Colossus and those other two just felt a bit like, okay.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, I did like the sort of the twist on like, oh, we're going to get in X-Force. X-Force is going to be amazing. This is where we're going.
That was genius.
And we're just like, nah.
Yeah, that sequence we won't do any spoilers, but that sequence where he gathers his team and they're on the plane is just genius. Yeah, that is
it's
very
just like,
good.
we're going to do something else now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, I really wasn't expecting that. So you can, So anyway, I mean, like, yeah.
Anything else? Because
I saw Mission Impossible Fallout at the weekend for my birthday, and wow.
Yeah. I think I need to start watching these films because I've heard so many people say just as a visual treat.
Yeah, and also the fact that like Tom Cruise is a maniac. I mean, like he'll do absolutely anything. What ones have you seen?
None of them.
None of them.
No, I'm not that big on just like your generic action film these days.
I mean, that's the thing. These aren't generic action films. I mean, certainly each of them. I mean, I would say
I've also not seen any of the Matt Damon ones. What were they called?
Bourne.
Yeah, I've not seen any of that. I just don't tend to go for those films. I'm sure if it was on, I'd really enjoy it. But Eli wants to watch the Mission Impossible film, so shall I just start from the beginning and just do the whole?
Well, I mean, like the first, for example, like the Bourne film, the first one's brilliant. The second two are good. Third one's not, or the fourth one's not really brilliant, not really worth it. And the fifth one, where Jason Bourne comes back, the fourth one's kind of okay. The fifth one, where he comes back, is like meh. So first three anyway. But Mission Impossible, like the second one with John Woo directing, is probably the worst one. But it's
that's the one with the massive soundtrack with Metallica and stuff on it.
And it's the most generic action film one. But
do I need to see 2 to understand 3 onwards?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's worth a watch, but it's kind of a bit of a slog because it's kind of like
I'll do it. I'll go for it.
It's kind of like the franchise trying to find its feet. So I mean, essentially the first one, it's very 90s because it is in the 90s. So like people have really old MacBooks, early iBooks with tiny screens, and they're like, oh look, 512 meg memory, things like. But the first one's just like a sort of great spy espionage caper. I really enjoyed the first one. Second one, like I say, very generic, but some cool stunts in it. Not really much of a plot. It's just a bit of a John Woo action fest. The third one is brilliant. I really like it. J.J. Abrams and Philip Seymour Hoffman as the villain. He's fantastic.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that sounds good.
I really, 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 really like the third, because that's the one where they kind of find their fate. The fourth one, I can't remember the name of the film. It's directed by Brad Bird.
One of them's called Ghost Protocol. I remember that much.
That's the fifth one. No, that is that one, actually.
Oh, is it? Hey.
No, yeah, Ghost Protocol's the fourth one, by Brad Bird. It's really good, and it has, like, for a lot of people, that's kind of the high water mark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got, like, the most insane stunt with, like, because obviously he does all this stuff himself, because he's a lunatic.
Yeah.
It's got that insane stunt where he's, like, climbing up the outside of the tallest building on the planet out in Dubai, and then running down it, and it's really good fun. Then Rogue Nation was the film before this one, which was, I thought it was solid, but this is the first time, this new one, Mission Impossible Fallout, is the first time where they've done a continuation, almost direct from the last film into this one. So they've got, like, villains carrying over from the last one into this one, and it also kind of ties things from the first one into this one, but, like, it's also the first one with a director rolling over into the next film as well.
Right, okay.
Because it's Chris McQuarrie, and, you know, Usual Suspects.
Oh, okay, cool.
So, like, what he does in Rogue Nation really pays off in this one, and, like, the action is just edge of your seat. It's really well
Okay,
paced.
you've swung me. What I'll do is I'll wait for this new one to come out on, you know, like Blu-ray, and then I'll just power through in one go.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, the thing is, like, you could certainly watch up to 3 now, and then save them, because, like, I think Eli will really like.
Yeah, he wants to watch them.
Well, actually, I think he'll really like the third and fourth one, because they're the most sort of, like, fun, heisty kind of films with insane action scenes. Whereas the first one's, like I say, it's more mature, and it's got obviously the iconic.
Oh, the dropping through the floors with the lasers.
Through the floor thing, you know, it's got that iconic scene which everyone kind of knows by heart now. But yeah, I think they're great. Like I said, he's just a maniac.
Any others?
No, I didn't get a chance to really see much else. I've been so busy.
Okay. All right, so if you want to leave us a voicemail, you can do so 05603 689 842, and we can play that clip on the show, so you can suggest some bands, post some links on there, or give little album reviews or gig reviews, anything like that. We can play it on the show.
Yep.
We'd really appreciate any reviews.
Yep, tell a friend at the very least. Get them to subscribe. Take a couple of minutes just to give us a 5-star review. That would be brilliant, because that really helps the algorithm within iTunes or the server that you use to download podcasts, because not everyone uses Apple products.
Yeah, but if you're on there, then leave us a quick review on iTunes, because that really helps. And certainly, like, you know, if you've been listening for, like, what, we're nearly at episode 200. So if you've listened for more than 20 episodes, yeah, please go and leave us a review.
Yeah, and thank you to the guys who gave us some mentions recently online on Twitter.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, that was
you
nice.
can tag us at Macho Grande Pod. It was really cool just to see our name getting suggested in a couple of little comments with regards to sort of, like, musical podcasts. So really appreciate that. And
yeah, it was awesome.
yeah, like I said, just it's really cool that anyone listens to what we do, to be honest, because we're just a couple of idiots shouting into the ether about things that we like.
Absolutely. And with that, we have no plans for the next show yet, but I'm sure we'll piece something together. There will definitely be a mystery box, and we're gathering things for the bumper episode 200, which is coming up very soon.
Oh god, 200 episodes.
Yeah, I'm gonna make you. Oh boy, am I gonna make you make some lists for that show?
Oh, right. I think I'm gonna make you. Sorry, oh, you're gonna regret it. Oh, you're gonna get it, my son.
So we're gonna close out on Leeched. Do you know this band? They're from Manchester.
No.
3-piece from Manchester, and they've got an album coming out via Prosthetic Records August 24th. There's an EP out which I've not heard called Nothing Will Grow from the Rotten Ground, and they've got a load of dates in August, and they're also playing Damnation Festival, which has got a really cool lineup this year, and I think you're going to dig the hell out of this as well. This sounds really cool. We're going to close out with a track called By the Factories. There's also a pretty cool video for this online that you should go and check out.
Cool.
And we'll see you very soon.
Alright, speak to you later, guys.
Macho Grande?
No, I don't think I'll ever get over Macho Grande.